It was supposed to be the dream trip of a lifetime, a family getaway high above the clouds, the kind of peaceful luxury that most families only dream about. Flight 1627 from Honolulu to Los Angeles carried 172 passengers and 7 crew members aboard. A Boeing 737, slicing through the afternoon sky with barely a ripple of turbulence. For 12-year-old Emily Carter, this was more than just a vacation, it was her birthday week. A surprise trip planned by her parents to celebrate her growing love of aviation. Emily wasn't an ordinary 12-year-old. While other kids played video games and scrolled through TikTok, Emily had been obsessed with flight simulators, logging hours on her dad's PC, memorizing cockpit panels, aircraft manuals, and emergency protocols, all for fun. She dreamed of becoming a pilot one day, a passion inherited from her late grandfather, who flew fighter jets in the Air Force. But nothing could have prepared Emily for what was about to happen. Next, a nightmare scenario that no training could truly simulate. 35 minutes into the flight, just as passengers began to relax, the cabin lights flickered slightly. A few passengers noticed, but the moment passed uneventfully. Then came a strange overhead announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently experiencing..." The voice of the pilot, Captain Rogers, trembled slightly before cutting off. No further announcement followed. Seconds turned to minutes. That's when it happened. A sudden drop in altitude, sharp and jarring. Gasps erupted. Drinks spilled. Trays slid forward. The plane tilted unnaturally. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Passengers looked around in panic, some peering anxiously toward the cockpit door. A flight attendant rushed up front and knocked rapidly, her voice urgent. No response. She turned, her face pale as paper. "We can't raise the cockpit," she told the cabin supervisor, fear etched across her face. "They're not answering the intercom or opening the door." Inside the cockpit, both pilots had slumped over their instruments. First Officer Min had collapsed seconds before the captain, toxic vapor leak undetected during the routine. Maintenance check had silently seeped through the ventilation. Both men were unconscious, breathing shallowly. The aircraft, now in autopilot mode, remained steady for the moment, but any deviation from course, turbulence, or system failure would spell disaster. In the cabin, panic spread like wildfire. A passenger screamed. Another began praying. Crew attempted to calm everyone down, but the fear was growing. Amid the chaos, Emily sat frozen in her seat near the front, her wide brown eyes locked on the now silent cockpit. Her heart pounded. Her mother clutched her arm tightly, whispering reassurances she barely heard. Emily's mind, however, was racing. She knew something no one else did. The 737's autopilot wouldn't hold forever. If the pilots were unresponsive and the plane deviated from its path or worse, began to descend, would require manual intervention. And that meant someone had to take the controls. Emily stood up. "Sweetheart, where are you going?" her mom asked, alarmed. "I need to help," Emily said, already moving toward the galley where the flight attendants huddled in whispered panic. "You can't go up there," one of them said as Emily approached. "It's locked." "I know the emergency override," she said without hesitation. "I've studied the Boeing manual. The door has a keypad. If you override it with the security code, it can open from the outside." The flight attendant stared at her. "You're 12, yes, and I might be your only shot." The next moments were a blur. Flight supervisor, sensing no better option, radioed ground control. The reply came with a grim tone. "We can't connect to the cockpit. If someone can get in safely and manually fly, we may have a chance." They relayed the emergency override code. With trembling fingers, the flight attendant keyed it in. The heavy door clicked. Emily stepped into the cockpit. The sight made her gasp. The air was stale, thick. Both pilots were unconscious. Lights blinked across the control panel, the autopilot engaged. She scanned the displays and tuned steady, but the plane was slightly off course. She took the captain's seat. Her hands hovered over the yoke, her breath caught. Then she took hold. "This is Emily Carter," she said into the radio. "In the cockpit, I have flight simulator experience. I'm taking manual control." Silence. Then a voice crackled back. "Emily, this is air traffic control. Lax. We copy. Stay calm. We're going to guide you down. The entire cabin fell into stunned silence when the overhead speaker came alive. This is Emily. I'm flying the plane now. Everything's going to be okay. Cheers broke out. Tears streamed down faces. But the ordeal had just begun. As the aircraft veered into turbulence, alarms blared. The autopilot disengaged. Emily had to fly manually across 1,000 miles of Pacific Ocean. Ground control patched in a retired pilot to talk her through it. She had to manage fuel ratios, flaps, thrust, altitude, all in real time. Her hands trembled, but her grip was firm. Hours passed in what felt like minutes. At 3:42 p.m., the coastline came into view, but a storm had rolled in unexpectedly. Crosswinds battered the aircraft. "We're going to land on runway 25L, the controller said. "Follow my instructions exactly." Emily nodded, sweat dripping from her brow. The descent was bumpy. Instruments blinked warnings. Passengers braced. Adjusted the throttle, aligned the nose, lowered the gear. The wheels hit the tarmac hard. The plane bounced once, twice, then settled. Screeching brakes, smoke, then stillness. The plane rolled to a stop. Silence. Then a cheer erupted louder than any ever heard in LAX's history. Emily had landed. The plane. Emergency crews stormed in. The pilots were rushed to the hospital and later recovered. Mealy stepped out of the cockpit, tears streaking her face, to a standing ovation. She had done the impossible. A 12-year-old saved 179 lives. Her name was broadcast around the world. But for Emily, the most important moment was when her mom hugged her and whispered, "Your grandfather would be proud." The runway at LAX still smoked faintly from the emergency landing as rescue teams swarmed the aircraft. Inside the cabin, a stunned silence lingered in the wake of the wild applause. No one moved at first, as if unsure if the miracle they just lived through was real. Emily Carter, trembling but composed, sat still in the captain's seat, her knuckles white on the yoke. Her wide eyes stared out over the runway, blinking slowly, taking it all in. For a moment, there was no sound except the quiet hum of the dying engines. Then, the cockpit door creaked open behind her. Paramedic stepped in, his voice soft and reverent. "You're okay now. You did it." As she stood, her legs buckled slightly. He caught her. She was 12. But in that moment she looked like someone far older, carrying the weight of 179 lives on her small shoulders. Cameras were already flashing by the time she exited the plane. Passengers streamed out behind her, some crying, others holding each other, all of them pointing at her as if she were something otherworldly, living legend. The crew still in disbelief confirmed the truth. The pilots were unconscious, and the girl had taken over. What started as a local aviation emergency instantly exploded into international news. Headlines raced around the world. 12-year-old girl lands plane after pilots collapse. Child hero prevents mid-air disaster. The miracle of Flight 1627, reporters camped outside her hotel within hours. Her parents were overwhelmed by the attention, but Emily herself remained unusually calm. NTSB and Aviation. Experts launched a full-scale investigation. They needed answers. What caused two experienced pilots to pass out simultaneously? How did a young girl know enough to manually control a 70-ton aircraft? And most pressing, could this happen again? The next morning, Emily was taken in for a debrief with federal aviation officials, not as a suspect, but as a witness. She sat across from a panel of men and women in suits, her feet not quite reaching the floor. Her voice, though soft, carried clarity and detail. She explained the control panel, her steps to disengage autopilot, how she contacted ATC, adjusted flaps, managed descent speed, and landed with crosswinds. One examiner simply dropped his pen. "How does a 12-year-old know this?" he whispered. Emily answered, "Flight simulators, manuals. I study planes for fun." Investigators later confirmed her accuracy by replaying the black box recordings. She hadn't just flown the plane, she had followed every protocol within emergency guidelines. Meanwhile, doctors confirmed that a leak from an auxiliary power unit vent had introduced Trace chemicals into the cockpit, a rare failure that silently knocked both pilots unconscious. It was a 1 in a billion anomaly. But if not for Emily, it would have ended in tragedy. The FAA later called it the closest brush with mass aviation loss in U.S. history to result in 0 casualties. Within 48 hours, Emily's face was on every screen in America. Morning shows scrambled to book her. Talk shows offered first interviews. She appeared on CNN, BBC, and even The Tonight Show, where Jimmy Fallon jokingly said, "I can't even make coffee without a YouTube tutorial." And this girl landed a 737. But beneath the glamour and applause, Emily felt something else conflict. She wasn't just a hero. She was a child who had been forced to grow up in 5 terrifying hours. In interviews, her words stayed humble. "I didn't think I could do it. I just knew someone had to try." Her story inspired millions. Aviation schools contacted her with scholarship offers. NASA sent her a personalized letter inviting her to tour their flight program. Pilots and flight crews around the world called her an honorary captain. But what came next wasn't celebration, it was pressure. The world demanded more from Emily than just gratitude. Everyone wanted to hear from her. Everyone had opinions how she should act, speak, dress. News stations dissected her every word. Online forums debated whether a child should be in a cockpit. Some even accused the airline of faking the event for publicity. The attention became overwhelming. Her family moved hotels 3 times to escape paparazzi. Emily's mother, Sarah, began screening interview requests, trying to protect her daughter. But Emily didn't want protections. She wanted peace. Then came the call that changed everything. The FAA requested she speak at their annual Safety Symposium, global conference attended by every major airline, aerospace company, and regulatory board. They wanted Emily to share her experience to help improve cockpit safety. She hesitated. Public speaking terrified her, but her dad reminded her, "Emily, you already spoke to the sky when lives were on the line. This is easier." So she agreed. The symposium hall in D.C. was packed: pilots, engineers, journalists. Cameras rolled. The audience stood as she took the stage. The microphone was almost too tall for her. She looked nervous. Then she spoke. "I'm not a pilot," she began. "I'm a kid who loves planes. I didn't plan to fly that day. But sometimes you don't choose the moment. The moment chooses you." The hall erupted in applause. She talked through her thought process, her fears, how staying calm saved lives. She asked airlines to rethink cockpit fail-safes and crew training. In case of simultaneous incapacitation, don't make the next emergency depend on luck, she said. Make it preventable. She ended her talk to a standing ovation. Boeing's CEO called her speech a wake-up call for modern aviation. After that, things changed. Emily returned home. Her parents declined TV deals and movie offers. They wanted their daughter to have her childhood back. Emily went back to school, where friends treated her like a mix between a superhero and a celebrity. She struggled with anxiety at first, flinching at loud sounds, waking from dreams of turbulence, but therapy and time helped. She stayed close with many of the passengers from Flight 1627. Some sent her letters. "The reason I get to see my grandson again." Others sent her a bracelet made from a recycled aircraft panel. She wore it every day. But one day, several months later, something strange happened. Emily received a message from a private aviation tech startup. They had recovered parts from the aircraft and found a discrepancy in the ventilation system logs, something that suggested the leak may not have been accidental. The chemical concentration was too exact, too timed, and then they revealed something else. The same plane had undergone last-minute repairs at a facility overseas just weeks before the flight. Suspicion grew. Could it have been sabotage? The airline denied it. The FAA said it would open a supplemental review, but the theory ignited a storm online. Conspiracy theories ran wild. A disgruntled engineer from the maintenance crew vanished. Days before questioning, no solid proof surfaced, but the doubts remained. Was Emily's miracle actually a near disaster planted on purpose? We may never know. Emily refused to speculate. "All I know," she said in a final press interview, is that whatever caused I intentional or not, people were in danger, and I did what I could. She would later write a book called Altitude of Fear, detailing the events in her own words. It became a bestseller. Hollywood adapted it into a film. But even with all the fame, she never let it change her. She kept her quiet passion for flight. At 18, she earned her private pilot's license. By 22, she joined the Air Force, and on her first solo training flight, she wrote her grandfather's name on the inside of her helmet. That same night, she posted a video to her followers. Was once just a kid with a dream. If I can fly, so can you. That video alone hit 12 million views. Her story lives on. Not just in headlines, books, or screens, but in every person she inspired to be brave in the face of fear. In a world full of chaos, one 12-year-old girl taught us that courage doesn't come with art. This, or watching, or wondering what you would have done on Flight 1627, remember this? Heroes are born in the moment fear knocks in. They choose to stand up anyway.